Hey everybody, it's Heidi Fang here. How you doing today? Lovely day to talk about some Raiders football with you here. I'm really excited to always do these, talk with everybody that's out there, answer your questions, at least hope to, because let's face it, sometimes we don't even know the answers, even if we try. There's a lot of times here that, especially with the draft coming up next week around this time, we'll be doing a show. You're going to want to make sure to check out vegasnation.com for that to find out all the details. But there's a lot of questions right now about the draft. And I think a lot of people are concerned whether or not the Raiders are going to get somebody that they want. I actually was on the line with Violator a little bit earlier. A lot of you might know him. He was just inducted into the Ford Hall of Fame for fans. And that's huge. He was inducted in the year of Charles Woodson and Tom Flores. So congratulations to him. But he was telling me about some of his concerns and all of the things that he hopes can happen in the 2021 draft for the Raiders. So if you have any of those questions, feel free to throw them my way. Also, don't forget, check out what we're doing right now. Adam Hill and I, who's our NFL writer, we're doing a series that encompasses everything about the NFL draft and all Raiders focus. So we take a look at who the Raiders might have taken in the first and second round in our first episode. And then we looked at the offensive questions. Obviously, right tackle's the big one. So that's one that we looked at when we did the second episode. And then the third episode is all defensive focused. And we talked a little bit about safety. That's a position that is going to need to solidify on the Raiders depth chart this coming season. So we'll see if they do that in the draft and what name might fill that void. But as far as your questions, so far, hey Jesse, I see you're watching. How you doing? Raiders. I'm used to hearing that when I'm out at the games, and I see that's what you put in the comment box there. So I thought I'd give you a shout out. We have on my Twitter at Heidi Fang, in case any of you ever want to go there, talk to me, talk some football, talk some Raiders, any of that stuff. Or I talk a lot about combat sports there too. So anything in those spaces, I'm happy to talk about. But Raider Cat asked, is there too much expectation on rookies when the lack of off-season practices, Corona, and everything else that goes on? That's the first part of the question. So I'll just go with that. This one looks like a two-parter. So the first question was, is there a lot of expectation on the rookies with everything that's happened with the pandemic and with the lack of off-season? I think absolutely yes. It's one thing, too, when you think about the defensive players that have been involved here, that they have had Paul Gunther, and now those defensive players are going to switch into Gus Bradley's system, and there's no voluntary OTAs happening right now. So it's like it's impossible to get the playbook in these guys' hands to really work them through it and then apply it. It's one thing to read it, it's one thing to see it on Zoom, it's one thing to watch film on it, but it's a completely different beast when you get out on the field and apply that and watch it. And you're thinking probably, how does she know what's applying it on the field as well? I was an athlete, and I understand that when you go out into a situation in any type of sport, that it becomes much more complex when you're in the moment because everything that you might have predicted on film isn't always what necessarily happens, and you have to be ready to pivot and figure out what your next move is. And when you're not able to physically be out on the field and apply that with your other teammates, it's got to be hard. They're not going to have until July to be able to do that with training camp. So to answer your question, yes, I think that there is a lot of expectation on these guys. And then you have to remember with Arnett, he had the broken hand. Granted, he played with the broken hand in Ohio State, but when he was also taking on concussions and dealing with those injuries, and then to hear that he had re-injured his hand after injuring it, it's like one thing after another. How effective can he really be playing with one hand and also coming off of some of those rough tackles that he has? So I'm willing to give all those guys a pass, and hope that in Gus Bradley's system, which I hear is much more simplified, you can see it's much more simplified. If any of you ever watched the Seahawks or the Jaguars and the teams that he's coached, Chargers is another one, you've seen the differences in how simple the defense is. And I think that's going to be a big thing for a lot of the players, especially in the secondary, how much that can free them up to really focus on their assignment. And I think with a guy like Jonathan Abram, that's also going to be huge. So I see the thumbs up there from Jesse, and out the house presents says Raider Nation. What's up? Just saying hello to the people checking in here and commenting. I always appreciate it. So let's get to the second part here of Raider Cat's question. Plus, is it wiser to find vets even for one season to start, just to give the rookies times to acclimate to the speed of the game? I don't think necessarily, but yeah, and I think I was talking about Arnett. I think in his case, I think that was huge for him, acclimating to the speed of the NFL game. You didn't see him picking that up, and it led to a passer rating allowed of over 106.9 or so. So it was a really big thing for him to have, I think, the speed and the acclimation and the getting used to it and the intricacies of the playbook and learning all of that stuff. I think if he had had somebody there, because this is a very young secondary, you look at it, and there's, probably the biggest vet there was Lamarcus Joyner. Um, yeah, I think that having somebody to learn from would have been huge for him. And having a rookie, I mean, excuse me, having a veteran there would have been huge for him. So, I think that you could bring in somebody, like one name that's still out there, Richard Sherman. People talk about him all the time because he was already a part of Gus Bradley's um, defense in the past. But I think that overall, when you start thinking about it, like, do you want to pay that price tag for a guy that hasn't started that many games or hasn't played regularly as much in the season? Because the Raiders right now are working with about a 5 million cap. So to be able to take that and then say, oh, okay, how much are we gonna have to pay Richard Sherman? What other moves are we gonna have to make? How do we restructure? How do we get these guys that we might look to draft signed with just 5 million in space? So you have to think about that too. That's definitely part of the equation. So I'm gonna pop back on over here, see if I got any other questions. Not right now, but that's all good. So I'm wondering if you guys are out there and watching, if you have anybody that you want to see drafted at the 17 spot, go ahead and hit them in the comments if you do. I'm thinking that the Raiders go with probably the best player on the board. Okay, so I would go defense if I was the GM. That's what I would do. I would definitely go after a defensive player who's best left on the board. There's been some names that gone around. Christian Barmore out of Alabama. There's the other player out of TCU I mentioned earlier, Trevon Moehrig. He's somebody I think that would be a good fit for this team at safety. But there's a ton of right tackles that can be NFL ready that are also out there. So I think that's going to be something that the Raiders really focus on when it comes time for the NFL draft. But as I've learned in the past 2 years here with the Mayock and Gruden era at full swing, is the people that they have their eye on are never who I have my eye on. So I had thought in the previous year's draft that they were going to go Judy or Lamb for sure. And I thought CeeDee Lamb was definitely a fit for what they needed. And then the year before that, I thought maybe Ed Oliver might be somebody, or Josh Allen might be somebody that they took at 4. And Cleveland's name came up. So that was proof to me that I don't know what the minds of Gruden and Mayock are looking at. And I'm wondering at this point if they'll go completely another direction. If they trade up, is that a possibility? Who would they go for if they trade up? Would it be somebody in the secondary? Would it be a linebacker? Would it be another person that could pressure up on the line? But I would definitely think defense is the way that the Raiders go first in the number 17 pick of the NFL draft. But that was all the questions that I had. Nobody's out there really throw me out any more comments. So for today, I'm going to wrap it up, but I appreciate everybody for tuning in and joining me here on the Vegas Nation. Make sure to check out all the podcasts. They're free. You can get those on vegasnation.com 3 days a week. And during the draft week, we will have 5 episodes happening. So make sure to keep up with us. Download the Vegas Nation app. Follow me on Twitter at Heidi Fang. And we also have the Twitter for Vegas Nation as well. So thank you everybody so much for tuning in. I'll be back another time to join you and answer more of your questions.